Yeah, so I work as the BAME Wellbeing Coordinator for the Hey Smile Foundation, and my role is to lead our DOST project, which is a befriending, well-being, and signposting service for our BAME community in the Humberside region. So we cover East Riding, Hull, North Lincolnshire, and North East Lincolnshire.
Perfect. And what do you like about your work?
I think the chance to interact with our community on a daily basis and implement, little changes, big changes in their lives that you can see almost instant feedback on is for me the most rewarding experience because, as you said, charity, sometimes people think it's something that people do as an aside, but in this case, I am paid to impact people's lives, and the feedback is almost instantaneous sometimes, and it's, for me, that's the most rewarding experience.
No, absolutely. And how did you get started?
So I've only been in this role about 7 months. I started in November last year. And something that I'd never thought I'd ever do in my life, because previously I trained as a journalist and I'd worked in the field for about 8 years, something like that, both in India and in the UK. So I'm originally from India. So yeah, charity and the voluntary sector was not something that I'd ever considered. But I did some actual volunteering last year during the first lockdown. And that kind of gave me a taste for how things are done on the inside in terms of setting up projects and leading change from within. And so when this opportunity came up, obviously there's the conversation around health and well-being inequalities, systemic discrimination, bias, racism. All of that was quite prevalent last year due to global events. And when the opportunity came up, and I felt like it was my calling, because this is something that I've always been interested in informally, and to speak to people who were interested in implementing change on a very fundamental level, and then at the ground level, I felt like it was almost tailor-made for me. And obviously I've got that lived experience of being, of a South Asian background, and I've experienced discrimination, racism, and systemic bias in some cases. So I felt like I could bring that, and obviously my communications background does help me. So in many ways, a lot of things came together, and I'm very pleased to sort of have been given this opportunity.
It's all kind of, it all seems to actually fall, and it's kind of one of the things that does all kind of match up, doesn't it? And so what would you say to anybody else starting out today?
Keep an open mind. It's great to have a passion. It's great to have dreams and desires, especially when you're starting out as a young person. If you're just going into adulthood and you're thinking about a career, it's great to have an idea. And I was very lucky to have a supportive family and a good support structure that encouraged me to follow my dreams. And I achieved those dreams. For a good 8 years, I was very successful at what I wanted to be initially. But circumstances can change. And when that happened to me, I had to keep an open mind as to what I could do. And what I found was that I actually had the ability to do things, the ability to learn new things that I never would have considered ever.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I've worked in jobs as a career break. I worked for 3.5 years as a building surveyor.
Okay.
Driving about 600 miles a week, and working in sometimes very hazardous environments. So the learning curve was quite steep, and I was going into environments that I never would have thought.
No.
So I definitely had to keep an open mind. But you find out things about yourself. So keep coming back to the open mind. So that's the biggest thing that I would say to anybody. If I could give that to my old self as well, that would be very handy. But since I don't have a time machine, the only thing I can do is pass that knowledge on to somebody else.
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what that's what we want to do here, is obviously help people to, that we want to give them the advice that everyone unfortunately has had to kind of figure out along the way. And did you ever think you will go back to journalism, or do you think this is for you now?
I won't. I mean, I'll never say never.
No.
But I feel like right now my role is incredibly rewarding. Like I get to implement change on a ground level, but also on a policy level and an
Okay.
administrative level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the kind of thing that you kind of start off with journalism thinking that you'll do something like this, which impacts social change.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a lot of barriers in that field.
Mm-hmm.
With this job, I get to do that. I get to come up with amazing ideas. I get to work with some amazing people who have done some incredible things in the voluntary sector, who have dedicated almost their entire lives to this sector.
Wow.
So I'm almost standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to implementing my project. But I do feel very, very empowered to bring about that social change. And I think I don't see myself leaving this industry very soon.
No,
Unless
it's a very, very positive thing. It's, and unfortunate. I mean, it is slightly unfortunate. Obviously, the world that we live in is desperate of it.
yeah.
But that is the way it is at the moment. And
it's sort of like being a doctor. If everybody was healthy, you'd be out of a job.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the ideal that you're sort of, ironically, that's what you're aiming for, is that everybody should be healthy.
Yeah.
And I say that with knowing fully that, both my parents are doctors and I grew up, in a very sanitized environment. But equally, I've seen my parents do a lot of charity work, within their industry. So they've given away treatments for free. They've given away consultations for free to people who couldn't afford it. Again, growing up in India, there was a lot of that.
Gosh, yeah.
And I've seen firsthand the feedback that they got, the instantaneous reaction of gratitude from their sort of service users, their patients. And I think, when I took on this role, I was very much inspired by them to say, well, look, hopefully I've got a few skills that I've developed over the years, and the ability to do my work, to do any work. And I thought, well, how can I bring that, and how can I marry that with my inspiration for, doing social good? And this role allows me to do that. And so, if there was another job in the voluntary sector that came up, I would probably choose that quicker than I would choose a role back in journalism, if that makes sense.